Our debate is service delivery for transition age youth and adults, empowerment versus care. Individuals with disabilities are not afforded the same opportunities as those without disabilities in determining their post-school choices and outcomes. People with disabilities are trapped in a system of care where their post-school choices are determined by others because of barriers related to attitudes, funding, rehabilitation, and healthcare. On the other hand, service providers are concerned with issues related to liability and service provision. What is the ethical responsibility of BCBAs in terms of assisting clients transitioning between settings? How can behavior analysts help ensure empowerment is occurring for clients? There are many professional and ethical dilemmas involved on both sides, and we will discuss some of them here. Mimi, Hyatt, and Ginny will be arguing the side of empowerment, and Chantel, Bonnie, and myself will be arguing the side of care. Mimi will state her side's position, followed by Chantel stating our position. Next, Hyatt will state points that prove Mimi's position, and I will state points that prove Chantel's position. Ginny will then have an opportunity to discuss weak points in my argument, and Bonnie will then discuss weak points in Hyatt's argument. Mimi and Chantel will make closing statements for their argument respectively. Lastly, I will close the debate. Each person will have 3 to 4 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Jackie. I'd like to begin by talking about poor transition outcomes. Many young adults with autism spectrum disorder experience poor transition outcomes in key areas, including post-secondary employment, higher education, healthcare, social connectedness, and independent living. When we consider their access to resources, we may find that they have limited options. These resources must be provided in their secondary and post-secondary experiences in order to help them achieve success in their adulthood. A question that we may ask ourselves is, how can we support individuals with ASD as they transition out of high school? The short answer might be through school staff members, family, or their communities. If the answer is as simple as the question, why is this an issue? Well, there must be an agreement that the support is essential. Employment is a significant factor in identifying the quality of life for adults with ASD, yet there seems to be personal, environmental, and work-specific needs that are not being addressed in supporting these individuals. Multiple research studies have shown that the relationships they build in their community and school have contributed to the support they require to have a successful transition into adulthood. Likewise, schools must implement the overarching purpose of special education, which is to prepare students with disabilities for education, employment, and independent living as stated by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Improvement Act of 2004. Transition team members and school psychologists must make moving efforts to help youth with ASD develop career-related aspirations and other future goals as they transition out of high school. The issue that remains is the fact that many individuals with ASD leaving high school are left unprepared with minor preparation for adulthood and a lack of support from their communities. This affects their job opportunities, as well as their quality of life as they transition into adulthood. Further research identified that young adults with ASD transitioned poorly due to poor person-environment fit, uncertainty concerning roles of parents, and the lack of adequate services. With this in mind, our team will be arguing for systems of care to take recognition towards the need for more support and resources as young adults with ASD transition out of high school.
Thank you for introducing our debate topic, Jackie, and thanks, Mimi, for starting us off with your team's standpoint on this important issue. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act mandates that all individualized education plans must include a section for transition planning. The purpose of this component is to facilitate the student's move from school to post-school activities. Transition planning must begin before the student turns 16 and must be based on the student's strengths and preferences. Transition planning for students with developmental disabilities such as ASD must also include opportunities to develop functional skills for employment and engagement in their community. The programs that these students access after they leave secondary school may include college or university, employment opportunities, or full-time care adult day services. Determining the appropriateness of placement is influenced by a variety of factors. These include the student's level of communication, self-advocacy skills, and independence, as well as the existing available programming, funding, and provision of service. Our team will be arguing that having structured job or career placement programs and independent living programs greatly increases the quality of life of adults with developmental disabilities. These programs help increase the number of adults with developmental disabilities that are able to go to work or go to school after high school, as well as the number of adults who can live independently. We will be arguing for programs like these to be funded and a part of IEP transition planning. Attempting to support individuals in every line of work is a burden that the funding resources that exist cannot fulfill. Instead, having structured work or residential programs as set options for students in each state offers the opportunity to train staff and provide the number of resources needed to support these individuals in their transition to adulthood. In addition, autistic individuals transitioning to adulthood frequently face medical, social, and mental health issues, increasing the liability on service providers to ensure appropriate placement occurs. The benefit to the structure of secondary school programs is that support can be provided to individuals in a group format from qualified staff who have adequate training to work with students with developmental disabilities. However, as autistic school-age students reach the age of 18 to 20, they are aging out of quality programs due to availability of appropriate programs, qualified staff, and adequate funding. Through discussion of the research available and the professional and ethical compliance code that governs the roles and responsibilities of BCBAs, my team will argue that transition planning that includes structured programs after high school is the best option to meet the needs of these adults while still ensuring low risk of liability in service provision.
Thank you, Chantal. Transitioning secondary school into the community, for example, attending college, vocational training, or finding paid employment, is a turning point in the life of any adolescent and may be more problematic for an adolescent with Asperger syndrome and autism. We define transitioning as a time when the adolescent identifies personal goals for life after secondary education with respect to college education, vocational training, employment, and/or independent living. At transition, the person moves out of secondary education, which is private or public high school, and into the larger community. Central to the success of transitioning is the adolescent's desire to work toward achievable goals and develop his or her ability to accept new responsibilities. For those with an autism spectrum disorder, the triad of difficulties usually include impaired social interaction, impaired social communication, and unusual or repetitive behaviors. The time for transition is problematic for these individuals who are resistant to change. Of all those on the spectrum, people with Asperger syndrome may have the highest likelihood of achieving a measure of success at transitioning because they are most likely to have normal cognitive abilities, may have exceptional talents, and might not have limited or impaired language skills. They may have ritualistic behaviors such as performing daily activities the same way each time. Asperger syndrome is characterized by impairments in social functioning, and the person often displays forms of repetitive behavior or restricted behavior. People with Asperger syndrome may also have extraordinary abilities or talents, such as superior memory for facts, conspicuous intellectual strengths, or skills that are paradoxical to their social deficits. Some of these behaviors might have discrete value in certain jobs in chosen careers, such as quality assurance and control. Under the right circumstances, and when thought is given to matching skills with expectations, a person with Asperger syndrome may be an ideal employee or college student. According to the Journal of Pediatric Nursing, their study included a total of 14 participants. They analyzed interviews conducted with the adolescents who were diagnosed with Asperger syndrome who were 18 to 23 years of age. All the participants reported that some measure of independence was the meaning of success. Similar to neurotypical young adults, they were aware of their dependence on others. These adolescents desired to live alone or with a friend. In addition to living independently, participants appropriately identified their goal of finding employment in a field that provided income and was also personally satisfying. They talked about blending their personal talents with the needs of employers. Most of the participants hoped for employment, and the remainder hoped to attend college. Additionally, some expressed a dream to find a partner, marry, and raise a family. These participants also discussed that accommodations, specifically individualized, flexible routine, orientation program and preparation of others are important in the transition process. These bridges were considered to be any adjustment or consideration made by an employer at work or a teacher in the school setting. Participants considered these to be the most important bridges to their success and valued any efforts made by others. In conclusion, to promote successful transitioning, one might refer to the theoretical premises of the social construction of reality. A program that assures successful transitioning involves helping the adolescent to fit in through personal transformation in conjunction with creating a more accommodating environment. One of the important duties of healthcare professionals is to find ways to help each adolescent with Asperger syndrome make the transition to community by helping him or her build those bridges, reduce the barriers, and create Asperger-friendly colleges and workplaces. In such an environment, one can acknowledge and accommodate each individual's special needs and embrace his or her complementary skills. Best practice transition programs should be designed to take into the account the surprisingly intuitive perspectives of adolescents and young adults, the anticipated barriers and bridges, and the receptivity of the community.
Thanks, Hyatt. Individuals with ASD have low rates of employment, independent living, and lifelong friendships. According to a study of 11,000 transition-age students with disabilities from 2001 to 2009, transition ages included 13 to 26-year-olds, 922 with autism spectrum disorders, 21% had no job or post-secondary education experiences at all, and 80% continued to live with their parents. Individuals with ASD continue to be dependent on their families for providing basic needs, financial support, housing, day supervision and support, and companionship. The challenge in meeting IEP requirements is that there is not one pathway to adulthood. There is not a common curriculum of skills necessary in adulthood. IEP teams and service providers need to shift their priorities from addressing the characteristics of autism spectrum disorder that impact the current school environment to anticipate behaviors that may become challenging in a work or university environment. Most of the educational planning process for students with ASD tends to be deficit focused, specifically skills and behaviors, and write their plans accordingly. When ASD students start their transition planning period, the priority must shift from skills the student cannot currently perform to skills that the individual will require in adulthood. Teams, schools, and service providers must refocus on the math, reading, and independent schools that the student can complete in order to be successful as an employee, friend, and active community member. The major issues individuals with ASD face when transitioning from school to young adulthood are related to their disorder and its impact on interacting with others and social communication. With the implementation of an individualized curriculum and evidence-based practices, individuals with ASD can be successful. Transition-age students with ASD need to focus on self-determination to have the ability to make decisions, solve problems, advocate for self and others, and demonstrate self-awareness. ASD students need instruction to learn self-management skills like self-monitoring, self-evaluation, and self-reinforcement. Independent skills help youth and young adults with personal hygiene, transportation, recreation, home living, and peer relationships. And lastly, career development skills. This includes career exploration, career preparation, and job placement. Students with ASD need strength-based, person-centered planning family collaboration, and behavioral-based teaching strategies in generalized environments. Person-centered planning assists individuals with disabilities in the planning process that leads persons with disabilities to experience self-directed lives. One of the main goals is to include the person with disabilities in planning his or her own support and services through programs like Planning Alternative Tomorrow with Hope Path, Personal Futures Planning, and Personal Lifestyle Planning. Collaboration with family and adult service agencies is identified as a core practice for successful transition to adulthood. Some adult services and supports include state vocational rehabilitation services, community rehabilitation programs, and one-stop career centers. The Workforce Investment Act created one-stop career centers in 1998 as a key employment resource for youth and young adults with disabilities. One-stop career centers are a significant resource for transition teams and can aid in the development of the transition plan. OSCC can assist in planning employment-related services, reach out to the community to identify and acquire other needed transition services, help with job search, access accommodations, offer job clubs, a support group with peers and a facilitator, employment resource staff, and follow-up services to help with job retention and career development. Another issue is independent living. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, 1 out of approximately 110 children in the United States has an autism spectrum condition. According to the US Census in 2011, there are approximately 82,660 under age 20 years, and therefore roughly 750,913 have an autism spectrum condition. Not every person with ASD will require residential care and treatment, but 55 to 75% of these individuals will also have a cognitive disability and an IQ falling below 70, requiring higher supervision and more intensive treatment than individuals with higher functioning autism. As many as 65% of individuals with autism spectrum disorder have comorbid conditions like attention deficit disorder, with or without hyperactivity, depression, anxiety, and seizure disorder. Even if an individual has a higher IQ, these comorbid conditions can affect their ability to live independently. A recent study done by the National Center for Education Statistics found only that 7% of individuals with ASD have lived independently the last 8 years. This information could be unreliable due to comorbid conditions, educational labels as autism for childhood integrative disorder, or school districts being less inclined to label a student with Asperger syndrome or pervasive developmental disorder as having autism. This data suggests that another major educational objective for students on the autism spectrum is independent living.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you everyone for your insights. I think we're all in agreement that having structured job or career placement programs and independent living programs greatly increases the quality of life of adults with developmental disabilities. I think we are also in agreement there's a great need for support for these individuals. The issue remains, who is responsible for ensuring these individuals receive the support they deserve? It is imperative these individuals receive necessary support prior to, during, and after their transition to adulthood. It is unethical that support ends when these individuals turn 18. Even neurotypical teenagers need support during their transitions into college, often throughout their college career, and then again after graduation before transitioning into the real world. Excuse me. If the current system were doing its job, support would at least be offered through the age of 18. Sorry. However, nationally, only about sorry, my son was calling me. Nationally, only about 2/3 of students with developmental disabilities graduate with a regular diploma, while most of these remaining students drop out completely. This number includes high-functioning individuals. This statistic proves that the system currently in place is already failing individuals before their transition to adulthood has even begun. These individuals are clearly not receiving the appropriate support at even a young age to be successful in life. Greater strides must be taken in order to ensure success of these individuals in the workforce. Statistics show the majority of jobs offered to individuals with special needs who do not go on to higher education are not careers and offer poor pay, if any pay at all. In 2014, a Justice Department investigation found that thousands of disabled adults in Rhode Island were fed into sheltered workshops, doing jobs like placing tops on bottles and stickers on boxes for just $2.21 an hour on average. Others were working for completely free. My question for you would be, who then is responsible for the success of these individuals? As behavior analysts, are we not responsible to work on socially significant skills in order to behave in individual success in the world? As special needs educators, are we not taught to create plans and programs to make the individuals as independent and successful as possible? There are also such programs which are currently able to support these people. One such program is Project Search. It provides both life skills training as well as on-the-job skills training. Each day, participants are to meet at the school where they receive training such as interview repertoire and apparel, work mannerisms, and expectations. They then are partnered with local businesses where they intern for a set amount of time before rotating to a new business. At the end of each day, these individuals return to the school to go over what was successful and what needed improvement upon during their performance at work. Over this 9-month program, every 3 months, the individuals move on to a new business so as to gain experience, but also to test compatibility between employer and the individual. The participants must meet a certain criteria by the end of the program to officially graduate, and they are then often offered employment with the businesses they've worked with. If there's no offer of employment, Project Search works diligently with the individual to find them employment and offer support such as help in writing cover letters, help searching for jobs, and offering letters of recommendation. Programs such as this are in existence, and they are able to accept the liability and financial burdens, as you said, to assist these individuals. If programs like this are already in place and proven effective internationally, why then cannot something like this be more widely available to interested individuals? Who is responsible financially and otherwise for the well-being of these individuals, if not the very system originally put into place to help them?
Thank you, Ginny. The system currently in place is insufficient in servicing the needs of the autism spectrum disorder population. We have created an environment of care rather than empowerment. It all begins with the educational system and the creation of goals contained within each individualized education plan or IEP. Establishing goals for individuals with autism spectrum disorder is central to the success of transitioning beyond the high school years. According to IDEA of 2004, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, an overarching purpose of special education is to prepare students with disabilities for further education, employment, and independent living. Transition planning is required in the IEP for students by age 16. For many students, this planning process may begin at 14, providing more time to build the necessary skills they will need to transition into post-secondary life. As this process begins, parents, educators, and students meet to discuss the creation of the individual's specific goals. Shortcomings may exist where students at the age of 14, along with their parents, possess a great degree of uncertainty of what options are available. It is often common practice for students to complete career interest inventories at the onset of the IEP when they turn 14 years of age. These goals are to be reviewed and adjusted yearly as the students progress through their educational placement. Despite federal law requiring schools to create a transition program plan for every individual with special needs, only 58% of youth with autism actually graduate with said plan. Furthermore, according to UC Davis Health, more than half the young people remain unemployed and unenrolled in higher education 2 years after high school, and most live with their parents. Individuals with ASD have additional issues related to their social, communication, and behavioral issues that may inhibit them from accessing opportunities for post-secondary education, community activities, positive peer relationships, and meaningful employment. In an effort to address these concerns, it is suggested the IEP include academic goals as well as ones that will focus on communication, social skills, and involvement in extracurricular activities. The issue remains addressing these at the age of 14 to 16 is not sufficient, and we are creating situations where individuals with ASD are cared for rather than becoming independent. Determining the appropriateness of placement is influenced by a variety of factors. These include communication, self-advocacy, level of independence, available programming, funding, and provision of service. ASD individuals transitioning to adulthood frequently face medical, social, and mental health issues, increasing the liability on service providers. As autistic school-age students become adults, aged 18 to 20, they are aging out of quality programs. My screen's flopping, I'm sorry. They're aging out of quality programs and aging out of quality programs due to the availability of appropriate programs and qualified staff and adequate funding. So the question that must be asked, if the goals are individualized and designed to assist those with ASD transition into the appropriate placement upon graduation, why are so many of these individuals lacking appropriate post-secondary options to assist them in leading productive lives? According to Autism Speaks, the nation's largest autism science and advocacy organization, the novel early intervention program for very young children with autism, some as young as 18 months, is effective for improving IQ, language ability, and social interaction. The researchers state all children between the age of 18 to 24 months should be tested for autism. Realizing this would be a costly and practically unattainable, we need to do a better job of providing early intervention services to address communication needs to children at an early onset of a diagnosis of ASD. As indicated by Autism Speaks nationally, 1 in 59 children had diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder by age 8, which is counterintuitive to the premise that early diagnosis and intervention will produce positive results in language acquisition and social interaction. This will continue the cycle of unemployment dependency on caretakers, inadequate employment, and limited access to higher education. Financial support needs to be provided for early detection, intervention programs, and parent education. Until we recognize the need for early diagnosis and the provision of intervention services, we will continue to have individuals with ASD remain in a system of care and not empowerment.
Thank you, Bonnie. Adolescents with ASD must be considered when implementing transition programs in high school so that they may remain supported as they enter adulthood. We must consider all individuals with ASD because each individual will require support in different areas. Employment remains an important factor as students leave high school and begin to enter their careers. When support is provided to individuals with ASD, they are able to build connections and maintain meaningful relationships, which will impact the success of their future. The pathway to college and other career training fields are mostly discussed during high school. This should be equally discussed with high schoolers with ASD because they will need to learn how to set goals and they should be encouraged to pave a pathway to success. Assessments and support programs should help high schoolers with ASD. Sorry, I lost my spot. Assessments and support programs should help high schoolers with ASD identify their individual skills and learn to apply them. Common barriers that individuals with ASD are experiencing are low expectations among educators, negative attitudes from activity sponsors, insufficient opportunities, and lack of instruction on social and collateral skills. Hyatt and Jenny bring up strong points in relation to these barriers. There is a lack of acknowledgement in the way these individuals are being transitioned into adulthood. As discussed, we must prepare these individuals for life beyond school. Employment opportunities rely on a variety of skills, and these skills must be reviewed with individuals with ASD in their transition programs. The goal is to allow them to live life as they desire, but that may not be possible without adequate support. They need both life skills and job skills so that they have the option to move out on their own if they want to, or apply to different jobs because they want to. Building a strong support system starts early, and it should be a priority no matter what school or institution they are enrolled in.
Thanks, Mimi. The current system of care includes structured post-school opportunities for individuals with developmental disabilities. Our team argued that it is our responsibility to ensure that these structured programs continue, as this is the best option to limit the liability in service provision while still meeting the transition needs for these individuals. As funding and resources for these programs increase, so can the options available to the individuals in care. Additionally, our team recognized the need for early diagnosis and provision of early intervention services, as this would allow for individuals with ASD to make the best gains in their development and independence early in life, and enable them to have more independence as they transition into adulthood.
Thank you, Chantel. I'm just gonna share a visual, I think. All right, guys. Oh. All right. Okay, here it is. This image shows the number of statistics related to the transition to adulthood for individuals with developmental disabilities. Most young adults live with their parents. Having structured programs would help increase the amount of adults who can live independently. Individuals with disabilities are not afforded the same opportunities as those without disabilities in determining their post-school choices and outcomes, but behavior analysts help ensure empowerment is occurring for clients. As we have all discussed here, there are many professional and ethical dilemmas involved on both sides of empowerment and care, and we as future BCBAs need to adhere to the ethics codes to make sure our clients are being provided for as best as possible. All right, thank you guys for listening to our debate.